Every man in town feared the lone man, until a native girl smiled at him from the trading post. Its streets were narrow and dusty, lined with buildings made from salvaged metal and sun-bleached timber. Every morning, the townspeople went about their routines, tending to livestock, repairing old hover carts, or trading scraps at the modest trading post in the center of town. Life was quiet, almost predictable. That is, until the day the lone man arrived. No one really knew his name. No one knew where he came from, but everyone in Redstone Gulch had heard the whispers. He was a figure who moved silently through the outer colonies, never staying long in one place. Stories told of failed expeditions, of alien creatures he had faced, and strange devices he carried that no one could understand. The townsfolk feared him, not because he had ever harmed anyone, but because he was different, and difference was always unsettling in a place like Redstone Gulch. On the morning he arrived, the suns were low in the sky, casting long orange shadows across the canyon walls. The lone man walked into town with a backpack slung over one shoulder, his wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. Dust clung to his boots, and every step he took made a soft crunch on the packed dirt streets. He didn't glance at anyone, and yet every eye in town followed him. Some children peeked from behind barrels, whispering excitedly to one another. The adults, more cautious, watched from doorways, careful not to show too much curiosity. At the trading post, Amara, a young native girl with bright eyes and an easy smile, noticed him immediately. Unlike the others, she didn't flinch or whisper. Instead, she leaned on the counter and watched as he passed, a small spark of curiosity lighting her gaze. There was something in the way he carried himself, a quiet confidence, but not arrogance, that made her wonder who he really was. The lone man stopped for a moment at the center of town. A small hover cart had broken down in the middle of the street, wheels tilted awkwardly, and a merchant was frantically trying to lift it with no success. Without a word, the lone man approached. The townspeople held their breath. "Need a hand," he said softly. The merchant jumped slightly. I guess if you know how." The lone man knelt and inspected the broken wheel. Using a few simple tools from his backpack, he worked quickly, adjusting gears and tightening bolts. In a matter of minutes, the cart was steady again, ready to roll. The merchant blinked, then muttered, "Well, thank you." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. Some of the townspeople shook their heads, whispering about what dangerous things he might be capable of. Others just stared, unsure whether to admire him or fear him. Amara, however, smiled. Just a small, gentle smile. It was not mocking. It was not fearful. It was curiosity. And for a moment the lone man looked up and caught her gaze. A flicker of something human passed through him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. The day went on, and the lone man made his way toward the trading post. The building was simple, a rectangular structure of metal and wood, with a faded sign that read Redstone Trading Post. Inside, the shelves were stocked with basic supplies, food packs, water canisters, tools, and trinkets from other worlds. Amara moved around the store, arranging items and helping customers, but she kept one eye on the newcomer. He approached the counter slowly, placing a small device on the table. It was shaped like a cube with blinking lights and tiny moving parts, unlike anything the townspeople had seen. "I need supplies," he said, "basic food and water, and maybe advice." Amara raised an eyebrow. "Advice?" she asked. "About the town," he replied, "and about surviving here." Her curiosity deepened. Most people avoided him, kept their distance, but she was different. She leaned forward, her elbows resting on the counter. "Well, you've already survived this far," she said with a smile. "That's more than most strangers can say. I guess the town will either like you or fear you. Right now, I'd say they're leaning toward fear." He chuckled softly, a sound the townspeople hadn't heard from him before. It was quiet but genuine, and even the merchant paused to look. The day passed slowly. The lone man wandered through the streets, observing the town. He noticed how carefully the residents treated each other, how every small act, sharing water, helping lift a cart, fixing a broken door, was done with care and thoughtfulness. He realized that, while Redstone Gulch was small and isolated, the humans here were clever and resourceful, not unlike him. By afternoon, he found himself back at the trading post, talking quietly with Amara. She showed him how to purify water using simple filtration systems made from local materials. He listened intently, nodding as she explained the process, impressed by her ingenuity. He realized that humans could adapt to almost any environment, that no alien technology could replace quick thinking, empathy, and cooperation. Outside, the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and crimson. The townspeople gathered near the main square to watch the sunset, a daily ritual that reminded them of the fragile beauty of their world. Even the lone man paused, taking a moment to breathe in the dusty air and admire the view. Amara approached him again. "You're not like them," she said softly, referring to the wary townsfolk. "You don't seem afraid." He shrugged. "I've had my share of fear," he admitted. "But fear isn't always useful. Sometimes you just need to understand the world and the people in it." She smiled again, a small, radiant curve of hope in the fading light. "Maybe," she said, "and maybe you'll help the town understand that too." For the first time in many months, the lone man felt something shift inside him. It was subtle, like the change in the wind before a storm, or the first light of dawn after a long night. Perhaps here, in this dusty frontier town, there was more to discover than just maps and supplies. Perhaps there were people worth knowing, connections worth making. As night fell, the stars above Virelia came out in full brilliance, stretching across the sky like a vast, sparkling ocean. The lone man stood at the edge of the town, looking up at the unfamiliar constellations. In that moment he felt small, yes, but also part of something larger, something human, something enduring. And in the trading post, Amara watched him from the window, her smile still there, quiet and unjudging. For the first time, the townsfolk began to wonder. Maybe the lone man wasn't someone to fear. Maybe, just maybe, he could be someone to admire. The arrival of the lone man had changed Redstone Gulch already, not through threat or power, but through simple acts of human skill, curiosity, and connection. And tomorrow, when the suns rose again, the town would begin to see him in a different light. For now, the lone man sat outside the trading post, repairing a small mechanical device, his hands steady, his mind alert, and his heart slightly lighter than it had been in a long time. The winds of Virelia whispered through the canyon, carrying dust, sand, and possibility. And somewhere deep inside the lone man, a small seed of trust was beginning to grow. The morning after the lone man's arrival, Redstone Gulch awoke to whispers. Not the soft, everyday whispers of trading or gossip, but whispers filled with unease. Farmers spoke in low tones near the water pumps, merchants murmured behind counters, and children tiptoed past the dusty streets, glancing nervously at the figure who had quietly changed the rhythm of the town the day before. Even though he had done nothing harmful, the lone man's presence had unsettled the town. His strange devices, the quiet way he moved, and his skill at fixing things the townspeople themselves had struggled with, everything made him an enigma. And humans often feared what they could not understand. At the trading post, Amara was preparing for the morning rush. The scent of warm bread from a small oven outside mingled with the dust and sun-bleached wood of the building. She glanced up as the lone man entered, his long coat brushing against the floor, his hat pulled down low. Unlike the townspeople, she did not flinch. Her curiosity was stronger than any fear. "Good morning," she said, arranging a stack of supplies on the counter. "Good morning," he replied, his voice calm and soft. There was a rhythm to it, almost deliberate, as if every word had been measured carefully. Amara noticed the device he had been working on yesterday, a small cube with blinking lights. "Still fixing that?" she asked. He nodded. "It needs to be perfect. If it isn't, it won't work when I need it." Curiosity danced in Amara's eyes. "What does it do?" "It measures water purity and pressure," he explained. "In a place like this, that can make a big difference." She tilted her head. "Big difference how?" He smiled faintly. "It tells you if the water is safe to drink or if it could make someone sick. It's simple, but it saves time and mistakes. And on a planet like this, mistakes can be dangerous." Amara paused. She liked people who thought ahead, people who cared about more than themselves. Most strangers she met in town were either nervous, rude, or greedy. But this man, he was different. Meanwhile, outside the trading post, the townspeople were already whispering. "Did you see him yesterday? He fixed the water pump faster than anyone else could," said one farmer. "That's unnatural," said a merchant, shaking his head. "No one can do that without some kind of advantage, some kind of power." "Or some kind of secret," another added, lowering his voice. "Maybe he's working for the colony authorities, or worse, maybe he's bringing trouble." The words traveled quickly through the streets, growing taller and darker with every repetition. By mid-morning, a small crowd had gathered near the square, half curious, half suspicious. They watched as the lone man walked calmly past them, carrying a small pack of supplies he had purchased from Amara. Amara noticed the tension. She stepped outside, brushing dust from her hands, and approached him. "Don't mind them," she said quietly. "People here, they're just cautious. Fear runs deep in Redstone Gulch, but it doesn't mean they're mean." He looked at her, a small flicker of appreciation crossing his face. "I understand," he said. "It's not their fault. I've been the stranger in many towns. They'll adjust." "Some will take longer than others," she said with a gentle smile. As the day went on, the lone man wandered through the town, observing quietly. He noticed the careful way the townspeople repaired broken carts, how they shared tools and supplies, and how they always helped one another, even in small ways. Their ingenuity impressed him. Even under suspicion and fear, humans found ways to survive, adapt, and cooperate. He stopped near a small garden at the edge of town, where a farmer struggled with a stubborn irrigation pipe. Without hesitation, he knelt and examined the setup. "May I?" he asked. The farmer hesitated, glancing nervously at the small group of townsfolk nearby, then nodded. The lone man adjusted the pipe, using simple calculations and careful hands. Soon, water flowed evenly, nourishing the garden as the farmer watched in astonishment. "Thank you," the farmer said, blinking. "I didn't think it could be done." "Humans always find a way," the lone man replied softly. The crowd, who had been whispering, began to murmur in admiration. The fear they felt yesterday was slowly mixing with curiosity. Perhaps the man wasn't a threat after all. Perhaps he was helpful. By afternoon, the lone man returned to the trading post. Amara noticed he seemed more relaxed now, almost comfortable in the town's rhythm. She handed him a small pack of dried fruits and water. "Eat something," she said. "You've been walking all morning." He accepted it, nodding. "Thank you." For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "You're not afraid of me." She smiled. "Afraid? No. You haven't given me any reason to be afraid. You're different, yes, but different can be good. It can mean clever. It can mean helpful. Fear is easier, but curiosity is stronger." He studied her, a strange weight behind his eyes, as if he had not encountered someone so unguarded in a long time. Most people either avoided him or watched him with suspicion. She watched him with interest. Outside, the suns began to dip low and long shadows stretched across the canyon walls. The town was quieter now. People began to talk in small groups, debating quietly about the lone man. Some still feared him. Some were impressed. And some, though they would not admit it openly, were curious too. That evening, a small crisis arose. A crate of supplies in the central square had tipped over, blocking the main path. The townspeople hesitated, unsure who would move it. The lone man stepped forward. "Let me help," he said. Before anyone could stop him, he adjusted levers and pulleys on the crate, using simple mechanics that relied on balance and leverage. Slowly, efficiently, he moved it to the side without straining or breaking anything. The townspeople watched in awe. Amara clapped softly. "See, clever, not dangerous." The lone man nodded, offering a small, polite smile to her. For the first time it felt natural. By nightfall, the town began to change its perception. Fear was still there, but it was softer now, mixed with curiosity and a growing admiration for what humans could accomplish, even in someone so mysterious. Amara closed the trading post for the night, stepping outside to watch the twin suns set beyond the canyon. The lone man stood nearby, adjusting his device once more, making small calculations as he worked. "You'll be fine here," Amara said softly. "It may take time, but the town will understand. Some things are just slower to change in Redstone Gulch." He glanced at her, a hint of gratitude in his eyes. "I hope so. I've been alone for too long. I don't want to stay that way," she smiled. "Then maybe the town will help you, and maybe you'll help them too." The stars emerged as darkness fell over Violia, sparkling brightly in the vast, alien sky. The lone man looked up, taking in the constellations he had not known before. And for the first time in months, he felt a small sense of connection, not just to the land but to the people who lived on it. Redstone Gulch had always been quiet, cautious, and careful, but change was beginning. The arrival of the lone man had stirred something in the town, something that could grow into trust, curiosity, and understanding. And as the night deepened, the soft, steady hum of human ingenuity and cooperation could be felt in small ways. A repaired pipe, a lifted crate, a simple smile, all signals that humans were capable of adapting, connecting, and thriving, even in the face of fear and misunderstanding. Somewhere in the shadows, the townspeople whispered again, "Maybe he's not so strange after all." The lone man, however, did not hear them. He was focused on the stars, on the devices in his hands, and on the small spark of trust that had begun with one curious girl. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring new challenges. But for tonight, there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that even in a place so wary and cautious, human ingenuity, empathy, and courage could slowly make their mark. And in that quiet, Redstone Gulch began to change, one small act at a time. The next morning, Redstone Gulch awakened under the golden light of the twin suns. The dusty streets shimmered slightly in the heat, and the faint hum of machinery and footsteps filled the air. The lone man had stayed at the edge of town through the night, resting near the small outpost of supplies he had set up. But now, with the morning sun rising, he felt the pull to move again, to explore, and to understand this strange, cautious town that had begun to notice him. Amara was already at the trading post, arranging goods on the shelves and greeting early customers. She glanced outside and saw him walking slowly along the main street, examining the buildings and equipment with an almost meticulous eye. She had learned over the past day that his observations were not idle, they were deliberate, careful, and meaningful. Humans had a habit of noticing small details, she thought, and he noticed them better than most. "Good morning," she called. He stopped, tipping his hat slightly. "Morning. I was thinking maybe you could show me around. The town, I mean." Amara paused, considering the request. Most people wouldn't dare ask such a thing, and she had never imagined showing a stranger through every corner of Redstone Gulch. But there was something in his calm, respectful manner that made her trust him. "I can," she said finally, "but you have to be careful. Some people are still unsure of you." "I understand," he replied simply. Together they began to walk through the town. Amara pointed out the small gardens, the water purification stations, the mechanical workshops, and the tiny homes tucked into the canyon walls. She explained who tended each place, what problems they faced daily, and how humans had learned to adapt to the harsh environment over generations. The lone man listened carefully, asking questions that were practical and thoughtful. "How often does the water need testing?" he asked at one of the pumps. "Daily," Amara replied. "If it goes wrong, crops fail, livestock suffers, people get sick. We've had to figure out ways to stay ahead." He nodded slowly. "I see. Humans always find ways." Her smile deepened. Sometimes. They stopped near a small workshop where a group of children was tinkering with broken gadgets under the supervision of an older mechanic. The lone man knelt to watch. He noticed that the children were using parts from old machinery to create something new: simple robots, small water dispensers, even a tiny wind turbine. "Impressive," he said quietly. Amara glanced at him. "These kids are our future. They watch, they learn, and then they improve. Humans don't wait for answers, we find them ourselves." He studied the children's work, a faint smile forming. "That's clever," he said. "They're learning more than you think." The connection between the two of them grew stronger with every step. Amara realized that he was not merely a stranger in town. He was a human like her, who understood the value of observation, experimentation, and careful thinking. And he realized that she, too, saw him as more than a mysterious figure. She saw a mind that could match hers in curiosity and ingenuity. After a while, they reached a small canyon rim overlooking the outskirts of the settlement. The view was vast and awe-inspiring. Below, the town sprawled modestly, surrounded by jagged rocks and alien flora that swayed gently in the warm breeze. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Amara said. He nodded. "It is. You have adapted well here." She tilted her head. "Adapted, yes, but it's not easy. Every day is a challenge. And every challenge teaches something new. Humans are stubborn, I guess, but it works in our favor." He considered that. Stubbornness can be useful. It keeps people alive in difficult conditions. It makes them find solutions. Amara laughed softly. "That's exactly what my grandfather used to say, and he was right. Humans survive because we don't give up. Not easily, anyway." He smiled faintly. "I can see that. You've survived. You've learned. You've built a small town in a place where others might have failed." She felt a warmth at his words, not pride but understanding. For so long, people had feared him. But he saw the value in the town, the cleverness in their daily struggles, and the human strength in small acts. She realized that he wasn't just passing through. He was beginning to understand humans in a way that most people didn't, through observation, respect, and recognition of effort. As they walked back toward the town, the lone man asked, "You trust me?" Amara blinked. It was a simple question, yet heavy with meaning. "I do. I trust that you mean no harm, and I trust that you understand what humans can do when they work together. You've seen it already." He nodded slowly. "Good. Trust is hard to earn. I've been alone for too long." "And maybe," she said softly, "you won't be alone here." They returned to the trading post, where the townspeople were slowly beginning to gather, curious about the lone man's intentions. He moved with calm purpose, greeting a few with quiet nods. Some were still cautious, but they noticed his deliberate actions and the small acts of respect he showed. Humans could sense kindness, Amara realized, even when it came wrapped in mystery. Midday arrived, and a small problem arose in the town square. A water cart had tipped slightly, threatening to spill clean water into the dirt. The townspeople hesitated, unsure how to fix it without causing damage. The lone man knelt next to it, quickly assessing the situation. "Move the smaller containers first," he instructed calmly. "Then adjust the angle slowly. Balance is key." He demonstrated carefully, using simple human reasoning and ingenuity. Water was saved, and the townspeople watched in awe. Once again, he had done something that seemed impossible at first glance, using only logic, observation, and patience. Amara clapped lightly, smiling. "Humans solve problems. Not aliens, not machines. Humans." He nodded. "Yes, that's what I've learned too." By late afternoon, the sun dipped low, casting golden hues across the town. The lone man and Amara sat on a small ledge overlooking the town, quiet for a moment as they watched the townspeople return to their daily routines. "You understand humans in a way few outsiders do," she said finally. "Most people see fear, danger, or difference. You see possibility, potential." "I've learned," he replied. "Humans survive not because they are the strongest, but because they observe, adapt, and work together. They notice details others miss. They find solutions in ways no one expects." Amara smiled softly. "Exactly. And maybe you can help them see that about themselves. They need to remember that sometimes." He looked thoughtful. "Perhaps. That is why I am here, I think. To remind them, to remind myself." The stars began to appear in the sky above Virelia, one by one, like scattered diamonds. The twin moons reflected faintly on the canyon walls, illuminating the town below. In the quiet, the bond between the lone man and Amara deepened, not through grand gestures, but through small, human acts of understanding, curiosity, and respect. As darkness settled, the town grew quieter, the hum of daily life giving way to soft whispers of anticipation and wonder. Redstone Gulch had seen a stranger arrive and had begun to shift in perception. Fear was fading, replaced by curiosity and a growing admiration for the human ingenuity that the lone man had quietly displayed. Amara turned to him. "You'll stay, won't you?" she asked. "I think so," he replied, "at least for a while. There's much to learn here and perhaps much to give." "Good," she said softly, "because tomorrow the town will face something new, and they'll need your mind, your skills, and your humanity." He looked at her, a small smile crossing his face. For the first time, he felt the faint warmth of belonging, not just in the town, but in the presence of someone who saw him clearly, without fear or prejudice. Humans could connect in ways that machines or alien technology never could, and he had already begun to experience that connection here, through one simple smile, one act of trust. As the twin moons rose higher, casting soft silver light across the canyon, Redstone Gulch began to feel a little safer, a little wiser, and a little more alive. And somewhere deep inside the lone man, a thought took root. Humans, with all their curiosity, ingenuity, and resilience, were worth every risk. Tomorrow he would see it again, and perhaps slowly the town would begin to understand him in return. For tonight, however, he sat quietly beside Amara, under the vast alien sky, letting the small acts of connection and trust remind him that being human and believing in humans was a powerful thing indeed. The morning came quietly to Redstone Gulch, with the twin suns rising over the jagged canyon walls. The air was warmer than usual, and a faint, unusual wind whispered across the streets, carrying dust and dry leaves. The townspeople went about their daily chores, unaware that today would test them in ways they had never imagined. The lone man had been awake for hours, inspecting his devices and checking the small systems he had brought with him. He could feel a change in the air, subtle but significant. The winds carried a different rhythm, and the sky seemed to shimmer with an unfamiliar pattern. He didn't panic. Humans had learned to read their environments carefully, to anticipate changes in weather, in water, in land. This was simply another challenge to observe, understand, and solve. Amara arrived at the trading post with a small basket of supplies, noticing his concentrated stance. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't look up immediately. "The winds are unusual," he said quietly. "If the patterns hold, the town might face a storm later today. Not ordinary, something stronger. It will test everything you've built here." Amara's brow furrowed. "A storm?" "Yes," he replied, still examining the devices. "Strong, fast-moving. It could damage buildings, disrupt water systems, even make some of the outer areas unsafe. But humans can prepare. You just need the right plan." She paused, thinking. Redstone Gulch had endured dust storms before, but they were never severe. The town relied on makeshift shelters, small windbreaks, and careful timing to protect crops and livestock. A strong storm could overwhelm their systems if they weren't ready. "We'll need everyone to work together," Amara said. "Exactly," he replied. "Humans survive when they cooperate, observe, and adapt. That's why I am here to help." Word spread quickly through the town. At first, there was unease. People whispered anxiously in the streets, unsure if the lone man's warning was real or exaggerated. Some scoffed, refusing to believe that any storm could be stronger than the ones they had survived before. But others, farmers, mechanics, and children who had grown up learning from necessity, recognized his knowledge and began to act. The lone man walked through the town, speaking with each household, showing simple methods to reinforce structures, secure supplies, and protect livestock. "Use ropes to tie down the outer walls," he instructed. "Check every water container for leaks. And keep communication lines clear so we can signal if conditions worsen." Amara followed him, helping wherever she could. She directed townspeople to secure the marketplace, cover delicate equipment, and prepare emergency rations. The energy in the town shifted from fear to focused action. Humans could face fear and turn it into problem-solving, she realized, and that was exactly what they were doing. By midday, the sky had turned a pale orange, with streaks of deep red signaling the approach of the storm. Dust swirled in small spirals across the streets, and the wind picked up with an unfamiliar intensity. The townspeople paused for a moment, watching the sky with wary eyes. "It's coming faster than usual," the lone man said calmly. "We need to act quickly but carefully. Follow the plan and you'll be fine." The first gusts hit the town mid-afternoon. Small debris rolled across the streets, and the larger wind gusts rattled doors and windows. But thanks to the preparations, the damage was minimal. The townspeople moved with determination, following the lone man's instructions and Amara's guidance. Ropes held the walls together, water systems remained intact, and livestock were secured in shaded, sheltered areas. Even in the chaos, the lone man noticed the ingenuity of the humans around him. They used what they had, scrap metal, old tarps, spare ropes, to build temporary barriers. They shared tools and coordinated movements, demonstrating a collective intelligence born of necessity and experience. The storm, which might have overwhelmed a less organized settlement, was met with strategy and collaboration. Amara noticed him observing quietly. "You're impressed, aren't you?" she asked. He nodded. "I am. Humans think creatively when they must. They adapt quickly. That is why they survive." She smiled softly. "And they can learn quickly too if guided correctly." Hours passed and the storm intensified. Gusts of wind shook buildings, dust and sand whipped through the streets, and the air was thick with tension. But the town held firm. Shelters protected the vulnerable, water systems continued to function, and the people moved as one, calm, precise, and determined. At one point, a small water pump near the edge of the town began to leak under the pressure of the storm. The lone man hurried to it, pulling Amara and a few volunteers along. With careful adjustments, they repaired the leak using spare parts, improvising a temporary fix that would last until the storm passed. "See," he said, glancing at Amara. "Humans don't panic, they adapt. They solve problems others might give up on." The storm raged on, yet the town endured. It was not a matter of brute strength or luck. It was human ingenuity, observation, and cooperation. Small acts of quick thinking prevented damage that could have been disastrous. Every person had a role, every effort counted, and every solution mattered. As night approached, the storm began to subside. The winds grew less fierce, the dust settled slightly, and the stars began to peek through the clouds. The townspeople, exhausted but relieved, emerged from their shelters. Buildings were slightly battered, but nothing had collapsed. Water systems remained functional, and the town had survived largely intact. The lone man stood at the center of town, watching quietly. He observed the people, noting their resilience, adaptability, and teamwork. Humans can thrive even in harsh conditions, he said softly, not because they are the strongest, but because they think, cooperate, and never give up. Amara approached him, a proud smile on her face. You said it, she said, and today they proved it. Everyone worked together just as you said they would. He looked at her, a faint smile forming. Yes, and that is what I hope to show them. Humans are capable of far more than fear alone allows them to believe. For the first time, the townspeople approached him openly. Farmers, merchants, and even children offered thanks. Their fear had not vanished entirely, but admiration and trust had begun to take root. Humans, it seemed, were learning from humans, and sometimes from those who had traveled far and seen more of the world. Amara turned to the lone man. You stayed calm, you guided us, and you shared knowledge. That's what made the difference. I only did what humans always do, he replied. Observe, adapt, and act. Fear can teach, but it can also blind. Knowledge and cooperation, those are what keep us alive. The townspeople lingered in small groups, talking quietly about what had happened. The story of the storm would be remembered, not for the danger it brought, but for how humans responded. They had faced a challenge together, and in doing so, they had discovered the strength of their own minds and the power of their community. As the night grew darker, the lone man walked to the edge of the canyon once more. The stars above Virlia sparkled brightly, reflecting the calm after the storm. He looked down at the town, now quiet except for the occasional soft murmur of conversation, and felt a rare sense of satisfaction. Humans were remarkable, not because of technology or force, but because they could see, think, and act together. They could find solutions where none seemed possible, and in moments of crisis their ingenuity shone brightest. Amara joined him, standing quietly at his side. You helped them see it, she said softly. He nodded. Perhaps, and perhaps they helped me see it too. Humans never stop surprising, even me. Together they watched the stars, silent for a while, knowing that the town had been tested and had passed. Redstone Gulch had faced a storm and humans had triumphed, not through strength alone, but through courage, creativity, and cooperation. And somewhere deep inside, the lone man realized something he had not felt in a long time: trust, respect, and belonging. The storm had passed, but its lesson remained. Humans were resilient, adaptable, and clever beyond measure. And in that quiet, silver-lit night, the town and the lone man had learned something new about the power of human ingenuity. Tomorrow, new challenges would come. But tonight, Redstone Gulch slept with confidence, knowing that its people were capable, resourceful, and ready for whatever the vast, alien world of Virlia could throw at them. And the lone man, sitting beside Amara, knew that for the first time in a long while, he was exactly where he needed to be. The morning after the storm, Redstone Gulch looked different. Not because the buildings or streets had changed, they had withstood the winds remarkably well, but because the people themselves had changed. Confidence had replaced fear, and admiration had begun to replace suspicion. Small acts of cooperation and ingenuity during the storm had reminded everyone of what humans could achieve when they worked together. The lone man walked quietly through the streets, observing the results of the night before. Farmers were repairing minor damages to fences, children were helping lift tools and supplies, and merchants were reorganizing their goods after a few overturned crates. Every action showed thoughtfulness, skill, and resilience. Humans had faced a real test and they had succeeded. Amara followed him, walking beside him as they visited the small workshops and gardens. They've learned, she said softly. Even if they won't admit it, they've learned how capable they are, and you helped them see it. He shook his head slightly. I only guided. They did all the work themselves. Humans are remarkable. They survive because they notice, they think, and they act. They survive because they refuse to give up. At the center of town, A group of townspeople gathered near the trading post. At first, the lone man hesitated, unsure if they would confront him or keep their distance. But the children stepped forward first, curious and unafraid. One held out a small mechanical device he had been working on, a simple water pump design inspired by what the lone man had shown them. "This is for you," the child said shyly. The lone man accepted it carefully, inspecting the small device. He smiled faintly. "Well done," he said. "Humans learn fast when they try. This is clever." The adult stepped forward next. One of the farmers, who had been skeptical at first, approached him. "You helped us yesterday," he said simply. "Not by force, not by threatening us, but by showing us how to act. We understand you better now." Others nodded. Murmurs of agreement passed through the small crowd. Fear had faded. Curiosity and respect had grown in its place. The lone man realized that the town had begun to see him not as a strange outsider, but as someone who understood humans, their strengths, and their resilience. Amara stepped forward as well. "You see," she said softly, looking at him with a small smile, "humans can solve problems when they work together, and humans can appreciate someone who respects them, guides them, and trusts them. That's what you've done here." He nodded, his face calm but thoughtful. "Trust is a rare thing. Humans give it carefully, but when they do, it changes everything." The town had changed overnight, and the lone man had played a part in that transformation. Not by force or by technology or by imposing his will, but simply by demonstrating observation, ingenuity, and calm leadership. Humans were capable of great things when given guidance and respect, and they had proven it. By midday, the trading post was bustling. Amara moved among the townspeople, organizing supplies, offering small advice, and quietly noting the shifts in attitude. The lone man observed quietly, his eyes scanning the streets, noting the small gestures of collaboration and ingenuity. Each interaction, each solution, reminded him why humans were remarkable. A small group of children ran up to him, holding a crude map they had drawn of the town and surrounding canyons. "We want to explore," one said. "We want to see what's beyond Redstone Gulch." "Can you show us?" He smiled faintly, kneeling to their level. "Exploration is good," he said, "but you must always observe carefully. Take note of what you see. Learn from it. Humans survive when they notice details others miss. That is your most valuable skill." Amara watched him with quiet admiration. "You've taught them more than they know," she said softly. The lone man looked up at her. "Not me. They teach themselves. Humans always do. I only guide." By evening, the town had gathered in the square. Lanterns glowed softly, casting warm light over the repaired buildings. Families, friends, and neighbors shared food, laughter, and quiet stories. The storm had passed, but its lesson remained. Humans had seen what they could accomplish together. And the lone man, once feared, was now part of that shared story. Amara stood near him, looking around at the town that had begun to accept him. "You know," she said, "I think they might finally see what I saw in you from the beginning. You're human like them. You respect them and you solve problems. That's what they need to know." He nodded, watching the townspeople. "Yes, fear fades when humans witness courage, intelligence, and cooperation. Trust grows when humans see understanding and guidance. And respect grows when humans see skill combined with humility." A small group of elders approached next, offering quiet nods and words of thanks. "You've reminded us of our strengths," one said. "We sometimes forget that humans are capable, even in places where it seems impossible." The lone man inclined his head. "Humans never truly forget. Sometimes they only need a reminder." Amara noticed the change in the air. People were smiling more freely, offering help, and showing signs of admiration. Fear, which had been so strong when he first arrived, was almost gone. And she realized that it wasn't just the storm that had tested the town. It was the presence of someone who understood humans, who demonstrated patience, skill, and respect. The night grew darker, but the warmth of human connection lit the town. Families returned home with a sense of accomplishment. Children chattered excitedly about what they had seen, and even the adults laughed softly, sharing stories of yesterday's preparations and small victories. The lone man and Amara stood on a small hill overlooking the square. The glow of lanterns reflected in the canyon walls, and the distant stars of Virlia began to sparkle overhead. "They're stronger than I expected," he said quietly. "They always are," Amara replied. "Humans, they survive, adapt, and thrive. You just needed to show them that, and they remembered it themselves." He smiled faintly, feeling a rare sense of belonging. "Perhaps this is where I am meant to be, not as an outsider but as part of what humans can achieve. They teach me as much as I guide them." She nodded. "And they will continue to learn from you, just as you will continue to learn from them." The two stood in quiet observation for a moment, watching the town glow with life, resilience, and human ingenuity. The storm had been a test, but the true test had been human spirit. And in that, Redstone Gulch had passed with flying colors. "Tomorrow," Amara said softly, "will bring more challenges, but I think they're ready, and you're ready too." "I believe so," he replied. "Humans are remarkable, and I've seen it firsthand." As the night deepened, the townspeople returned to their homes, content and proud. Redstone Gulch had survived a storm and discovered something greater than safety. It had rediscovered the strength, ingenuity, and courage of its people. The lone man, sitting beside Amara, felt a quiet satisfaction. Humans had faced a challenge, adapted, and thrived. And now they had accepted him, not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as someone who understood their potential, their creativity, and their resilience. The twin moons of Virlia rose high, casting silver light over the town. The canyon walls shimmered faintly, and a gentle wind carried the scent of dust, earth, and hope. In that moment, Redstone Gulch was alive in a new way, not just surviving but thriving. And the lone man, for the first time in a long while, felt a true sense of belonging. He was not alone. He was part of a story that celebrated human ingenuity, courage, and empathy. Amara smiled at him once more. "The town has changed, and so have you." He nodded. "Yes. Humans, when they work together and trust one another, are unstoppable. That is what I've learned here, and I will carry it with me wherever I go." The night was quiet but full of promise. Redstone Gulch had endured the storm and discovered the power of human spirit. And the lone man, once feared and misunderstood, had become part of the town's story, proof that even strangers could inspire trust, admiration, and hope. The future was uncertain, as it always was, but one thing was clear. Humans, when they worked together, observed carefully, and acted with courage and intelligence, could overcome any challenge. And in the soft glow of the twin moons, the town and the lone man understood that more clearly than ever. For now all was well. Redstone Gulch slept, safe, proud, and filled with the quiet power of human ingenuity.